last-standing Liberal provincial premier opposing the cornerstone of the federal Liberal government's climate plan, the national price on carbon. It's scheduled to increase from $65 to $80 on April 1st, but fury is echoing Conservative premiers and now calling for a pause on that price hike. Another part, though, of the Fed's environmental plan, focusing on building an economy of the future, in tandem, but at times at odds with the U.S. President Joe Biden, south of the border, has set the stakes with a massive business subsidy package meant to incentivize that transition. But it's meant Canada has to put up big bucks to convince companies to come here, not to the U.S. Leading that effort is Federal Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne, who the Prime Minister has also tasked to lead Team Canada Round 2. The impetus for Round 2, none other than the reason for Round 1, Donald Trump, the now solidified GOP nominee. Minister Champagne has been in the U.S. all week, taking meetings against that backdrop, and he's with us from Washington, D.C. live now. Hi, Minister. Good to see you. Thank you so much for making the time.
Well, it's great to talk to you from Washington, Vassy.
I wanted to start off on the prospect of Donald Trump, who is now, for all effective purposes, the GOP nominee. In your view, Minister, as someone who is leading the Team Canada efforts, what are the odds of him winning?
Well, I would say, first of all, I'm doing that with Mr. Heng and Ambassador Hillman, our ambassador here in Washington. Listen, the message that we're bringing about connecting the dots is not a partisan message. You know, I can tell you, I met with Republican governor, Democrat senators. When you talk about economic security, when you talk about supply chain resiliency, when you talk about national security, that's a message that is heard by everyone. And what I'm saying to them is that this is not just a nice relationship to have. This is a strategic relationship for the United States. It's the essential relationship, I would say. And I can tell you, you know, we've been working with Republican administration. We've been working with Democrat administration. This team in Ottawa knows how to do that. Ministers have been engaged. I was there. Minister Freeland, others have been there at the time. We know how to engage with our counterparts here in Washington. But more importantly, this is not just about Washington. We started in Windsor, went to Detroit, the mayor of Cleveland, Ohio, went to Atlanta and Georgia, met with the governor. This morning I was with the South Carolina governor. I know what's interesting, Vassy, all of them have received also massive investments in terms of the EV sector and the battery ecosystem. But what I told them is that we are interdependent because you know what? The critical minerals you need to produce these batteries and these cars are coming from Canada. Canada produced the semiconductors or the critical mineral for that. So what I'm hearing from both of them is that regardless who's going to be in the White House, this is about economic security, which is national security. And that's a message that resonates in Washington.
I guess that what I wonder, though, Minister, and I certainly do take the point that you're taking meetings with both Republicans and Democrats. I looked through the list, for example, of Republicans you met with, including the governor of Georgia. You would not describe him as a supporter of Donald Trump. Have you engaged at all with the people who are allies of Donald Trump? Because to say Republican is quite a big umbrella, and it no longer encompasses the people, really, who support Donald Trump, who could effectively be in the White House.
No, I met, honestly, Vassy, the list is long because actually I've been on the road for 10 days, but I've met people who have been even part of those who have been drafting, for example, a project, you know, that I think it's called Project 2025. So people have been engaged on either the Republican side or the Democrat. I was at the SAFE Summit this morning. You find a lot of, you know, ex-generals. You find people who are really on both sides, honestly, because the message about the uniqueness of the relationship, this essential relationship resonates. If you talk to Republicans, they see that as business. They see that this is about future-proofing revenues and businesses and what they need. When you talk to our people which are closer to President Biden, they see that as being aligned with the United States, which we are. So honestly, that message resonates because it's about jobs. Millions of jobs depend. But one thing is that we need to connect the dots for them because not everyone here, or I would say very few people even, wake up in the morning thinking about Canada. And when you make the case and you say, by the way, you know, for example, Michigan, Canada is the largest export market, but it's bigger than the 13 other markets combined. So when you go there, you're the big guy because people say, wow, this is Canada. we need to engage strategically. So I'm trying to move from just, like it's a nice relationship. We take that for granted, that it's a strategic relationship that we need to nurture on both sides of the border.
And I certainly understand that, and I understand the argument that you're putting forth. But I guess what I'm curious about, on behalf of Canadians, is the degree to which you are making that argument to people who have not necessarily demonstrated any receptiveness to it. And by that I mean all the arguments that were put forth, for example, around steel tariffs to President Donald Trump, then President Donald Trump, failed to, ultimately did convince him, but failed to initially, and for a while, with great damage, convince him of the logic of what he was doing. And so I'm curious as to whether you are using that logic or using those arguments with people who are around Donald Trump right now, or just Republicans and Democrats who don't support him.
Well, I would say it's a broad spectrum, Vassy. But I'll give you an example. I was with the governor of North Carolina this morning. And I was saying, Governor, it's great that you have, for example, the BMW plant in North Carolina. But did you know that the aluminum that is used to manufacture BMW in North America is coming from Canada? This is coming from Rio Tinto in Saguenay in Quebec. The green aluminum you're using at BMW in Spartanburg, which is a city in South Carolina, happens to come from Canada. So I was saying the resiliency of that investment in your state is depending on what we're doing together. Then I went on with example with each of them. And to your point, Vassy, I've been talking to a number of people who are advising on both sides, making sure that that message is heard. And you know what, like I said, it's the same message, but it's kind of understood differently. But one thing is clear, when you're in Washington or when you're in the United States, when you talk about economic security, national security, supply chain resiliency, making sure that proximity is king, that we're going to work together, we're going to be very strong also to make sure that we protect the integrity of key supply chains, semiconductor, biomanufacturing. That resonates. I can tell you, CEOs are telling me supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. And when you say Canada is the key partner for that, that's really a message I could say. For all of those that I've been talking to, I was with the Business Roundtable representing 200 of the largest CEO in America. And I was with their leadership. They had, 8 people around the table. I said, Minister, we get it. We need to work together. We need to engage with each other. And that's what we're going to continue to do, obviously, with them.
Just quickly, I'd point out, Minister, when you highlight, for example, your meetings with the governor of North Carolina, he is a Democrat. I do want to move on, though, because you...
Sorry. No, I meant South Carolina. Sorry if I misspoke.
Okay. That's okay.
It's the governor of South Carolina.
Okay, understood. I just want to move on then to a domestic issue, because you have been also one of the ministerial leads when it comes to the government's agenda to address the cost of living. The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, a Liberal, Andrew Furey, is now today calling on your government to pause the increase to the carbon tax slated for April the 1st. Will you consider that?
Listen, I like Premier Furey. I've known him for a long time, but I think we have been very clear that a price on pollution is the right thing to do. It brings more money in the pocket of Canadians. That vision, that approach has been clear from the start. The Prime Minister has been clear. I hear his voice, but I think that, we have a plan to fight climate change. We have been clear with Canadians all along. And honestly, I think that Canadians understand that. The plan is working. It's going to bring more money in the pockets of Canadians. And we're going to continue to do that because you know what? This is an investment in the future. This is an investment that has allowed us also to attract investment in Canada because people see these Canadians are serious about fighting climate change. So I would be happy to engage with Premier Furey. I'll see him soon. But I can tell you we're going to continue to do what's right for the country, not only now, but for the future.
Minister, though, the Premier's point is that he is not, like you characterize many of your opponents on the carbon tax, against the issue of mitigating climate change, that he takes it very seriously. But at the same time, people in Newfoundland and Labrador and many of the other provinces in which this carbon tax applies are dealing with a high rate of inflation, high interest rates, and he's simply asking your government to pause the increase until interest rates go down and inflation stabilizes. Why won't you at least consider that? Are you so ideologically wedded to it that you can't listen to the premiers who are saying it is adding to the burden of the cost of living for the people who live in their provinces?
Listen, I understand the issue around cost of living, Vassy. I've been the one with colleagues who have been fighting all along to make sure that life is more affordable for Canadians. I took on, for example, the grocery sector and the big chains to make sure that people can afford grocery. I keep on that fight. I'm going to even bring that at the G7 meeting that I'm going this evening to make sure that we start seeing competition issues, making sure that life is more affordable. I get that. You know, I come from rural Canada. I know that people talk to me. But at the same time, people that I meet in the street understand that we need also to be fighting climate change, that the price on pollution is the best way. It's been tested to make sure that, we have the right framework to make sure that we drive the right behavior, but at the same time, that we send the money back in the pocket of Canadians. So this is a system that it's working, and Canadians understand that.
Respectfully, Minister, do Canadians actually see that it's working? The Auditor General pointed out that your government has not attached a specific emissions reductions target to the price on carbon, that you have not produced evidence. The NDP Premier of Manitoba said the same thing. The people associated with the provincial NDP in both Saskatchewan and Alberta have raised the same concerns. Now your Liberal colleague is also calling into a question exactly what you're trying to argue. Even the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said when you take into account all the indirect costs, slightly more Canadians are worse off than better off because of the carbon tax. Again, why are you so ideologically wedded to it that you can't just wait until inflation stabilizes and press pause for a moment?
Listen, it's not about ideology. It's about the planet. Vassy, I'd say that the fact that we have a plan to fight climate change has brought billions of investment in this country. People understand, we set ourselves to be the green supply of choice to the world, whether it's green aluminum, green steel, green batteries, green semiconductor. That's what we're known for. This has attracted investment and make sure that, we position Canada as a leader in the world. And decarbonizing industries is a trend. Look in Alberta. We have Heidelberg, for example. We're going to have the first green cement plant in the world. Dow Chemical decided to put their plant in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta. Why? Because they want to have the greenest polyethylene plant in the world. So that system is working. It's bringing money in the pockets of Canadians. And I think the vast majority of Canadians agree that we need to keep on and fighting climate change. It's the right thing to do for the planet. It's the right thing to do for our kids. And we can do it in a sensible way, making sure that we drive the right behavior that gives money back in the pockets of Canadians. I respect my colleagues. I talk with all the premiers in Canada, for sure. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we take the right decision for now, but also for the future of this nation.
Just very quickly, Minister, you're standing in Washington, D.C. Your government has hailed the climate policy of this White House administration as incredibly serious. It is also attracting the investment that you talk about, and it is doing so without a consumer carbon tax. Again, why not consider?
Well, I would say what has been attracting investment in Canada is the talent of our people. It's the ecosystem we have, whether it's the aerospace industry, in the natural resources. And I was just in Calgary a few days ago. It's the critical minerals we have and the proximity. Well, listen, I think that, there's different things. In a sense, they see that we are serious on fighting climate change. But you were asking me broadly, how do we attract investment? Is our people. It's the fact that we have ecosystem, we have the critical mineral, renewable energy, and access to market. And the fact that they see Canada as listen, I was giving you the example of South Carolina. Imagine the cars manufactured in South Carolina at BMW use aluminum, which is produced in Quebec, which is the greenest aluminum in the world. That's an example of why our policies and the investment we've been driven is helping this economic security. When I said that to the governor, I must tell you should have seen, he even gave me his phone number. So that tells you about the relationship. When they see these things, they say, well, we are interdependent. We need to work together. We need to bring these investment together. We have a chance in a generation to attract investment in North America. That's what we're doing.
Okay, Minister, I'll leave it on that note. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I appreciate it, and safe travels.
It's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you again for having me.